We ready? Okay, good morning. Javier Becerra, the Attorney General for the state of California. I'm flanked by our Governor, Jerry Brown, and the Chair of the California Air Resources Board, Mary Nichols. We're here principally to make a very important announcement, and I'll start it off by perhaps saying something that is a no-brainer. The world is not flat. Pollution is not free, and the health of our children and our future is not for sale. And that's why today California, joined by 17 other states and the District of Columbia, is taking action against the Environmental Protection Agency and Administrator David Pruitt and the Trump administration to stop them from doing what 40 plus years of history have taught us, that we can clean our air for the benefit of our people, and we need not roll back the achievements that we've had over these last 4+ decades in order to make progress. Decades ago, the state of California jumped in the fight against air pollution. We've been in the driver's seat ever since, sometime around 1970. If you look at our efforts, smog forming pollutants and greenhouse gas emissions were our target. And that was what we needed to do because we knew that we were a state that had millions of vehicles. Our efforts have not just helped clean the air in California, but throughout the nation. States from coast to coast have adopted voluntarily California's tough emission standards. In 2009, California reached a landmark agreement with the federal government and the Obama administration and with automakers. We worked hard and worked together to create a unified national standard for vehicle greenhouse gas emissions. The clean car standards we agreed to are not only reachable and achievable, they are science-based, and they will help families save money. And they are critical to tackling climate change. The EPA also agreed with us on those findings, at least until recently. These days, the EPA, led by Administrator Scott Pruitt, is taking aim at the standards we have adopted to protect our families and our economy from air pollution. On April 13th, the EPA announced that it would reverse course on the clean car standards and undo the rules we had carefully crafted with facts and science. With this latest reckless decision, the EPA did not just jeopardize our planet and our health, they also broke the law. Today, leading a coalition of 17 states and the District of Columbia, California is once again defending these standards and holding the Trump administration accountable. Today, we filed a lawsuit in the Circuit Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia. We assert that the EPA has violated the Administrative Procedures Act, which bars arbitrary and capricious decisions. The Trump administration failed to follow its own clean car regulations, and the Trump administration violated the Clean Air Act. My message to the EPA and Administrator Pruitt is simple. Do your job. Regulate carbon pollution from vehicles. Defend the clean car standards. Don't tear them up. As I have said many times before, the state of California is not looking to pick a fight with the Trump administration, but we are ready for one, especially when the stakes are so high for the health of our families, our economy, and our planet. We won't stop fighting for common sense rules that protect all Californians and all Americans. And with that, let me now turn it over to Mary Nichols, the Chair of the California Air Resources Board.
Okay. There's a very nice little bench here that was just left for that. Okay. Back in 2004, the California legislature told the Air Resources Board to adopt vehicle emission standards for greenhouse gases. And we've been fighting to implement those standards ever since. The Bush administration tried to deny us a waiver under the Clean Air Act. We sued and we were successful, and then when President Obama came into office, he not only approved the waiver or ordered EPA to approve the waiver, he actually did something even better, which is that he put his administration behind greenhouse gas emission standards. And since 2012, we have actually been enforcing together a joint set of standards with the United States EPA and related to those, the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration. This fulfilled a long-standing plea from the auto industry to have one set of standards that they were working under. And we agreed to the federal standards and to accept the federal standards, even though we already had our own standards, which were slightly more stringent, because of the fact that we had a national standard in place that was going to help improve air quality for the entire country. Now we're facing a situation in which the administrator of EPA is attempting to withdraw those national standards and bring chaos into this situation. And he's doing it with a process that, as the Attorney General said, is completely unknown and flawed. He's attempting to withdraw a determination that was made by the former administrator and to replace it with something which has no basis in the record at all, and then springboard from that into a new rulemaking, which he has already said he intends to be either weaker or flat in terms of what we're seeing in actual emissions controls. So we are very grateful to our Attorney General and his team of wonderful lawyers who've been working with us, and to the other states who are joining with us, including a number of states that don't follow California's rules, because they have recognized that the standards that are in effect today are standards that we need for our country to do its part in cleaning up our air and in moving forward as we need to do to address the problem of global warming. I now want to turn over the podium and my stool, if he wants it, to Governor Brown, who has been leading the fight to get car companies to move forward and to recognize their responsibilities for cleaning the air since the 1970s. Governor Brown.
Thank you, Mary. This is a very important day. States representing 140 million Americans are joining together to sue Outlaw Pruitt. Not Administrator Pruitt, but Outlaw Pruitt. He's breaking the law. He's flouting the Clean Air Act and the legitimate needs and well-being of the American people. We know, as a matter of fact, and we've known for more than a decade, that pollutants coming out of vehicles, out of the tailpipe, does permanent lung damage to children living near well-traveled roads and freeways. This is a fact. And the only way we're going to overcome that is by reducing emissions and ultimately getting to zero emissions as quickly as we can. This is about health, it's about life and death, and this character in Washington with his expensive travel tastes and his funny little redecorating plans that cost the American people all sorts of money is riding roughshod over the laws of this country and the health of our people. So that's the key point, health. Second point is the Pruitt and I suppose his boss, Mr. Trump, they want people to buy more gas, create more pollution. Hard to believe, but that's the fact. And the third thing, which is perhaps more fundamental, this move by Pruitt, with the help and encouragement of Trump, is not going to make America great. It's going to make America second rate and may and probably will jeopardize America's auto industry. The combustion engine in the next few years has to get more efficient, and in a few years after that has to be transformed by zero-emission vehicles. If America can't do it, I believe China and other countries will. And what will happen is what happened to the solar industry. America now has 20%, and one of the two companies used to be predominant in production of solar. We're going to have the same thing in autos. America will not have a major auto industry on the path that Trump and Pruitt have laid down. So we're in a very competitive world. We want to make America great. We want to make the world safe for everybody. And this is the exact wrong way to do it. So this lawsuit is very important, and there'll be more lawsuits to follow. But make no mistake about it. This is about America's place in the world. It's about jobs. It's about health. It's about having vehicles and transportation opportunities that are safe, clean, and efficient. That's what it is. I can't do anything bigger. There's been a lot of talk. We have other issues that health care and immigration, all the other stuff. This is a science-based attack that we make on these characters in Washington who, in the name of making America great, are making us weak and making the world more dangerous and unsafe, because climate change is not a joke. The fires, the floods, the mudslides, the rising sea level, the disease vectors, the migrations, the turmoil that's going to come about, this is real stuff. And if Pruitt doesn't get it, and if Trump doesn't get it either, they got to go. And pending that, we're bringing this lawsuit, and I intend to fight this as hard as I can with all the resources at the command of California, joining with all these other 17 other states and the District of Columbia. I'll take any questions.
California has always been a leader in the fight for national clean air standards. We've kind of gone our own way on that. Why is this lawsuit necessary? Why can't California just continue to set the standards nationwide?
Well, because we entered into it. There's an agreement here. This is an illegal act. We maintain it's illegal. It's not lawful. You can't just, like some, tin horn dictator, say, I'm tearing up a rule that was based on a 2-year determination process. You must have evidence, some substantial evidence, or you have arbitrary behavior, which is illegal, which is against the American system of rules-based governments. So we're fighting that. Also, we breathe the same air, and the air is not going to get cleaner if we have dirty cars everywhere else. And besides, the Trump people want to take away our separate standards. So we have to fight the first step in a war, not just against California, but against the children and the elderly and all those who are vulnerable to the poison that Pruitt wants to impose on the people of this country. It's so outrageous that I find it hard to find the right words to describe what is so unbelievable in their misbehavior.
You mentioned, that we have a variety of other things in lawsuits against the Trump administration: immigration, healthcare. Do you see the fights on climate as the most important fight that California needs to have with the Trump administration?
Well, since the climate disasters brought about through the buildup of methane and CO2 and oxides of nitrogen and CFCs and all the other greenhouse gases present absolutely catastrophic consequences for California, for America, and for the world, there's nothing more important. And the fact that people may say, well, that's down the road a little bit, doesn't negate the fact that if we follow the Pruitt-Trump path, we follow our way off the cliff to disaster. So we have to stop it. It's imperative. We can argue about all these other topics, but this is existential. And together with the threat of nuclear annihilation, the changes in the climate are going to irreversibly affect civilization and war and peace in our hemisphere and throughout everywhere else. So this cannot be taken lightly. I take this as an existential threat to America, to California, and to the world, and I'm going to fight it with everything I can.
The Administrator Pruitt has said to Congress that he's not going to remove California's waiver on tailpipe emissions standards. Do you have is this a preemptive strike, or do you have a sense
where did he say that? That's not the impression I get.
Well, that's what he told Congress. So do you have a sense that he is going to
say he's not going to
imminently
remove the ultimate waiver authority, or is he going to is he going to leave in place our greenhouse gas reduction emission standards? Has he said that? I don't believe he has. He may not try to attack the underlying authority enshrined in the Clean Air Act because he couldn't get away with it. But that doesn't mean he's not going to try to change our Pavley standards.
Right, I just was wondering.
If he doesn't, look, hallelujah. If you're right, he endorses the Pavley standards, hallelujah. We'll join up. But I don't think that's true.
I'm just wondering if you have.
Is that true, Mary?
Have you been given the impression or
these
given
have
information?
sources that really exceed our own.
Have you been told that he is imminently planning to reverse that waiver, or are you taking a preemptive strike here?
No, this is a wrongful action in and of itself. So we're attacking. But if there's going to be some kind of conversion on the road to Damascus that Pruitt says, I now see, whereas before I was blind, hallelujah. But I don't. I have no evidence. And if you want to share your secret sources with Mary, we'll be glad to comment. But the information I'm getting does not validate the basis of your question.
Governor, I'm curious, you said a moment ago this is a fight about science, but as you know, a lot of the political debate right now is the rhetoric we use, who believes the rhetoric.
What?
Yeah, well, my point is, this is the second time in a couple of weeks that you and the Trump administration have tussled. There was the issue of the border, of the National Guard.
No, that wasn't science.
But no, but my point is,
That was politics.
Therein lies the point. The challenge is that the president's rhetoric is different than yours, and at some point the American people have to believe your rhetoric or his rhetoric. And I'm curious,
What about science?
how do you make the point in the
Thousands
universe we live
of
in?
independent, peer-reviewed studies have indicated that what I'm saying about climate change is true.
And yet the president persists in the path that he has gone on.
So I don't follow this question.
My point
You
is,
want me
this is
to
the political rhetoric we
comment
live in.
on
You
what?
are trying to make your case to the American people, to the California
Yeah.
people here today. The
Yeah.
president makes a completely different case.
So?
And so how do you...
Is that news?
How are you
That
victorious
is not
at that?
news that he's making that case. So what are you trying to get? I'm trying to...
How is that not news?
That Trump is Trump and Brown is Brown? I mean, these are pretty obvious. Look,
Is it all about science? So it's all about science. The
wait,
difference is...
Give me that question again, because I really want to respond to it.
I'm just asking you, as a seasoned politician, if you can talk a little bit about the challenge to get people to listen to you in this era that we live in, where the president says a completely different
All right, I
version
get
of
it.
events.
The era of Trumpian noise, very challenging for newspapers, very challenging for politicians, very challenging to have a democratic governance, because you feel compelled to repeat all these tweets, and Trump is definitely running a one-man demolition derby on science, on the Clean Air Act, and a lot of things we're trying to do. So all I can say is we're bringing a lawsuit. I believe we can win. We're going to win. We're going to stop him from rolling back our standards, and that's good. Now, as far as who's going to dominate the nightly news or how all that, the president, you have all agreed the president is more news than anybody else. So as long as Trump is president, he gets first cut for the news, both good and bad. So I think it's a battle. We'll see with the November elections how that'll turn out. I tend to be engaged in that. But this is a battle for not only the soul of America, but for the future of America. And we're being divided. That tax thing, which you penalize the blue states, and now they're attacking what California's trying to do. At the very moment when competition in the world and danger is rising, Trump is dividing. So I think it is very challenging,
Can I add something?
and all I can do is do the best I can.
Let me add something to that. Again, not to repeat what the governor said. We have sued now the EPA. I think this is our 10th lawsuit specifically against the Environmental Protection Agency. I think this is our 16th or 17th lawsuit, and my staff can correct the numbers, on environmental issues against the Trump administration, whether it's EPA or Department of Energy, Department of Interior, et cetera. Of our 16 or 17 lawsuits on environmental issues, we have around 10 or 11 victories to date. We have not lost one case against the Trump administration. We have not lost one case against Scott Pruitt and the EPA. And so while people may have to try to decide between believing Donald Trump or believing the state of California, At the end of the day, the track record in court between Donald Trump and the state of California is California, about 11 victories, 0 losses. Donald Trump, 11 losses, 0 victories. And so maybe at some point, the public will start to see that the Trump administration is overreaching in its use of federal authority.
Mr. Becerra, how many lawsuits do you have currently pending against the Trump administration altogether?
This, I believe, marks 32.
Mr. Becerra, just a question to piggyback on what Alex said. Is this, the timeliness of this, has the administrator acted yet so that you and the other states can respond? Or do you have to wait until he officially?
Well, he has, we contend that he has formally acted. He has essentially thrown out the midterm evaluation that was done according to the process outlined in 2010 in that joint agreement between the federal government, the state of California, and the automakers. And so he has now taken formal steps to undo what everyone had agreed upon. And so we believe that it's time to act, and we've got those 17 coalition member states in the District of Columbia representing about 40% of all the population and about 40% of all the cars that are on the streets of America to prove it.
Maybe I would just add to that, what the administrator has said is that he is relying on this withdrawal for his new effort to put out a notice of proposed rulemaking that will withdraw the existing standards. So it's a precautionary measure on our part to file to make sure that he can't use this totally worthless final determination that he has purported to put out as a basis for a decision-making. So as the Attorney General said, and the Governor will sue at every step along this process just to make sure that they don't get away with it.
Yeah.
Ms. Becerra, this litigation is over the midterm review that the Obama administration did in, what was it, December of 2016, is that correct?
17. Or yeah, December 2016.
Just as he was leaving?
Yes.
Wasn't that sped up? Wasn't the midterm review supposed to be sometime later in 2017? No? I'm often mistaken.
Because I was there and was a
Yeah.
part of it all, I guess you could say. No, there was a deadline by which he had to complete that action, which would have been the following April. But as it happened, the technical review was done, had been totally vetted, and so they put out a proposal, and then they went final just to clean up the record before they left office. It was obviously not well received by some in the auto industry, and it fed right into the president and the administrator's desire to show that they could get rid of regulation. But the fact is that it was a completion of something that had been underway for years, and there was nothing in it that was premature or hurried at all.
And it was the result of a comment period, facts and science, not a rushed action.
You know, all that technical stuff aside, we're losing the battle on climate change. We got to step up our efforts, and things will get dramatically worse, irreversibly so, if we don't make a big turn. And part of that big turn will be in the combustion engine, zero-emission vehicles, and all the other things we're trying to do. So this is not about technical. This is about the survival of some of you and certainly all of your children. That's what it's about. And it's nothing less than that. I'm not exaggerating. And it is very hard to wake people up. I agree with that. And the November election will be an opportunity to see where the world's going. And then in 2020, we'll get another chance. And hopefully we're going to get on the right path.
Do you see
Governor, you
yourself
have-
playing a role in that November election? Sorry,
Yes, I'm certainly.
In what way, Governor? Sorry.
No, that's not to get up. We'll have a lot of press conferences.
Okay.
In all the ways that a long-term political person of my background could imagine.
Governor, you have 8 months left in office. You're holding your big climate summit in San Francisco
Yeah.
in September. But talk about between now and then, how else are you going to continue your fight against the Trump administration on climate? You mentioned there could be more lawsuits. You know, do you have plans for more international travel? How are you going to use the bullet
Well, we
pulpit
have
that you
the
have
Air
for 8
Resources
months?
Board working away with their scoping session. They just had a hearing last week on the low carbon fuel standard. So there's lots of things that we're doing. As far as my particular travel plans, I intend to travel to San Francisco in September.
I guess, I mean, you know, you have the bully pulpit right now being the governor of California. So you have a platform, and after you leave office, you're still
Well,
Jerry
if you
Brown,
have
so
some
you'll still have a
ideas-
platform, but how, do you have any plans for how you might use that to continue making your case that this is an
I don't have any
threat?
fixed plans at this moment other than what I've told you. But there always are lots of possibilities. And, as you may know, I don't plan months in advance. So I'd say stay tuned, and I'm looking for ways that I can be useful. All right? Yes.
You said when Jeff Sessions was in town that the federal government was going to war with California
Yeah.
because of that lawsuit. We now have 32 lawsuits
Yeah.
against the federal government. Has California gone to war with the federal government?
I would say the conflict is sharpening. And there's just a reality here. We have a president with his 41% approval rating. That is what it is. And he wants to do things that we think are profoundly dangerous and not in the interests of California or the American people. So we're doing what we can in a free society to stop this juggernaut. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to return to my question
Yeah.
earlier because I think I maybe phrased it poorly, that California has its own waiver to do
Right.
stricter standards.
Well, we have a waiver authority, and then we've obtained many, many waivers over the last 45
Right,
years.
so the administrator told Congress last week that he had no plans to revoke California's waiver. So is it that you don't,
Is
at
that-
present, so is it that you don't believe him, or that it's more important to you to take
Well,
this action on
Wait a
a
minute.
national
Let
level
me ask
rather than
Mary, 'cause
allowing
she's
California?
you're asking me about Pruitt said and Brown saying, and that's a little bit he said. Tell me what you know. What do you know about Pruitt, and when did you learn it?
Oh, wow. We've seen press reports of a document that was leaked that supposedly represents what the administration is planning to put out sometime early May, which indicates that they want to attack the waiver that we currently have to enforce our greenhouse gas emissions. We have not heard that officially or even unofficially from anybody at EPA. We don't know that. So that's why we don't try to dignify it by saying it's true, because we sincerely hope it's not true. And if it is, then we've got, as the governor said, another problem on our hands.
Right. I think, remember that saying in the gospel that the evil is sufficient, the evil of the day is sufficient thereof. So we have an evil here, we're fighting it. Now, will there be more evils? Most certainly. And we'll attack them as they show their ugly head.
Of the many Central Americans who are now at the border in California, would you like to comment about their plight and what the National Guard,
I don't think so.
California
Given
National
the
Guard will
focus
do?
I want on this issue, I don't think I'll comment on that.
Including what the vice president said yesterday, that the border is a problem in that particular area for the whole country.
I think Pence is a problem for the whole.
All right, on that note,
Thank you, Governor.
Mr. Becerra, can I have a quick statement in Spanish?
We can do it after.
Thank you.